Here we're looking at the synapse, and we describe this as being a functional connection between one neuron and another cell that it's signaling. Okay, we talked about two types, chemical versus electrical. And again, for our purposes, this is going to be the more important synapse, the chemical synapse. So let's remind ourselves of what's happening here and where these synapses are located and talk about some of the different types. So we've got this neuron, this is our presynaptic neuron. And then we've got an adjacent neuron. Okay. Just to remind ourselves of the parts of a neuron here, we've got the soma, right? These are the dendrites. We've got the axon, and then the axon terminal. And so the area that we're really focused on is this connection. So this is called the synapse. And this is an axodendritic synapse, so the most common type of synapse between the axon of the presynaptic neuron and the dendrites of the postsynaptic neuron. Okay, so this is our synapse. Okay, and so we can also label these two neurons just for clarity. So this one is called the presynaptic, and then the postsynaptic. Now, the other types of synapse are if that neuron is not signaling another neuron, but if it's signaling another type of cell. So let's draw a cell here, and this can be smooth muscle, we said this can be muscle. This can be glandular tissue. So gland, this can also be an adipose cell. And we'll talk about that in the autonomic nervous system. But these are the types of cells, either a muscle cell, gland, or adipose, that we can have as the second structure in the synapse if it's not another neuron. So it's either another neuron or one of these types of cells. Now, if it's a skeletal muscle cell, the junction is called the neuromuscular junction. Okay, so if the second cell is a skeletal muscle cell, the junction is called the neuromuscular junction. The synapse is called the neuromuscular junction, excuse me, the neuromuscular junction. If the cell, I'm going to just move it over here. If the cell is a cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, or the other types of cell, gland or adipose, so I'm going to put cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, gland or adipose, then the junction is named differently. It's called the neuroeffector junction, because these are considered effector cells. So the neuroeffector junction, okay? So these are the various options that we have for a different type of cell if it's not two neurons signaling each other. If it's a muscle, gland, or adipose, the junction is named differently. If it's skeletal muscle, it's called the neuromuscular junction. If it's any of the others, it's called the neuroeffector junction. Okay, and so this is essentially what a synapse is, that area of functional connection. And so what we see here is that the electrical energy that was traveling down the axon. So remember we had this conduction of action potentials leaping from node to node if this were myelinated, or just moving from segment to segment if it were not. But when the action potential gets to the axon terminal, we have to convert this electrical energy to something else in order for it to travel across this synaptic communication. And so that's what we're going to be speaking about today, how we convert that electrical energy from the action potential to chemical energy, and we release something called a neurotransmitter, which is what carries on the signal across that synaptic junction. All right. Okay. Any questions here before I keep moving? So this is essentially what a synapse is and how it kind of ties into what we've been talking about. Okay, so someone's asking an excellent question. Just to clarify here, are neuroeffector junctions or neuromuscular junctions also considered synapses? Yes, they are. So they're areas of synaptic communication. They're just named accordingly because it's not a traditional neuron to neuron synapse. Okay, great question. And so the same set of events happens here, slightly different players, but it's the same idea as far as the events that are taking place.